The final season of HBO's series, A Game of Thrones, ended in May of 2019. George R.R. Martin is probably going to be working on The Winds of Winter for at least another year. So, the best you are going to get from now until Martin is finished and published is read-alikes and watch-alikes. These are my suggestions for books and TV shows that are like Game of Thrones. Number 1. Elric of Melniboné by Michael Moorcock. If you liked the darkly magical world of Game of Thrones, then you will probably like the world created by Moorcock in his Elric of Melniboné saga. Elric's world is far darker, magical, and phantasmagoric than Martin's world. Martin's world feels more historically inspired, while Moorcock's world is born from myth and legend, inspired more by the writing of Clark Ashton Smith than by history. When reading the first book in Martin's series, I wasn't even sure any real magic existed in his world of Game of Thrones. It seemed at first that things like gods and long-lost magic were just crazy things these characters believed, but were not real. In Moorcock's world, you know the magic is real right off the bat. I will probably have more to say about Moorcock and Elric in future videos, and if you want to know more, then subscribe to my channel and leave a comment telling me you want to know more. My second choice is I, Claudius by Robert Graves. If the magic in Game of Thrones wasn't your cup of tea, but you liked all the Machiavellian political scheming, then I, Claudius might be what you want. This is both a book and a TV series. If you liked the child actor who played Joffrey, you'll love John Hurt's performance as Caligula. My third choice is The Seahawk by Raphael Sabatini. The Game of Thrones was also, at times, swashbuckling adventure, and if that's what you liked, then almost any novel by Raphael Sabatini would be a good choice. This is an old classic swashbuckling novel by a writer who was a master of the genre. Only flaw to Sabatini I've noticed is that he always seems to use the classic Hollywood swashbuckling formula in the books I've read. About 4 of them, he wrote a lot more. The repeating pattern is this: a basic 3-act structure where the story always ends when the hero succeeds and the villains get their due. There's also usually a woman who misunderstands the hero and a side villain that redeems himself, think Jaime Lannister. The heroes are usually sardonic, roguish yet honorable, philosophically stoic, and face adversity with a barbed tongue, dignity, and cunning resourcefulness. Think Tyrion Lannister, but is a tall, well-built man who can fight. While the 3-act structure is something George Martin has rejected in his books, even though the TV series tried to impose something similar in the last season, you'll still recognize some of the character elements. The fourth book is another one that will swash your buckle. The Black Arrow by Robert Louis Stevenson. Among fans of the Game of Thrones, it is generally well known that the feud between the Starks and the Lannisters mirrors England's 15th century War of the Roses, where the House of York feuded with the Lancasters in a series of dynastic civil wars that lasted decades. So why not read a novel that actually takes place during the Wars of the Roses? If the name Robert Louis Stevenson sounds familiar, it's because, as I am sure many of you out there already know, he wrote some classics like The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Treasure Island. My fifth book is The Princess Veluria by Norman Doring. Alas, at this time you can only read the first draft of what may or may not be the first chapter because I only recently started working on this novel. It was something to do while I was in COVID-19 isolation. But for those of you who want to be writers, you might find it instructive to see me write and rewrite and gradually put this thing together. I hope to be talking more about this in the future. I'm also looking for beta readers to read what I've written and tell me what they think. On screen now should be the first 2 paragraphs. If you want to read the whole chapter, There will be a link in the underbar.